Hey M,
Hey, Brax.
have you ever played Skyrim?
Oh my god, of course. It's on every platform.
It is, and now it's on PlayStation VR. It actually came out a few weeks ago, but I have yet to review it. I'm kind of excited to talk about it. It is an example to me of how porting a game to VR can actually be quite successful if it's done the right way. Hey guys, this is Brax.
And this is Moriarty, and today we're taking a look at Skyrim VR.
I was excited for Skyrim VR because it was probably the first full, really long game that I played once I had my headset. I want to start by saying this is the same game again. They actually toned down the graphics a lot, so to make this work in VR, they had to do so. Even in the headset, it's not going to be as pretty as you would expect with like the HD edition, but it's not really about that. It's about experiencing it in that immersive world. The part for me that makes this game worth playing isn't actually playing through the story, because everybody at this point already has done this probably 3 or 4 times with 3 or 4 different types of characters. But like I've spoke about before, being in a headset is something that's hard to describe to people that haven't played VR. And this is an actual full game that you can play in a VR world. A lot of times when I play VR games, I'm going to have a 2-3 hour experience at max, and that's going to be the end of the game. So I think Skyrim was a great candidate to take older games that perhaps aren't that impressive because they are built on older engines and things of that nature, so they aren't up to par with modern technology, but putting them in a headset does make it almost a new experience and something that is worth playing. It's a really interesting thing to think about because this isn't new. You are not going to feel like, oh my god, I've never played this before, but you are going to say, wow, this is really cool.
I think my problem is the same problem that most people have, in that I don't think it's worth $60. I think that's really what it comes down to is I already own Skyrim. Why should I spend $60 for the same game with a different control method?
Totally fair. This was the 3rd time that I paid $60 for Skyrim in my life, so that's $180 worth of Skyrim that I've bought. I think by now, if there's ever any more Skyrim releases, I just want a free copy. Just one, Bethesda. Come on, hook me up. I've already given you $180, so please, next time, don't make me pay full price again, or don't make me pay at all. But you just brought up something interesting, and that is the different controls. That's an interesting part of this game as well. It can be played with either a controller while you're sitting down, or you can choose to use the PS Move controllers and stand up. With the Move controllers, there are a couple of things that are worth considering, and the first of those is the menus. When you are navigating through the menus, it can get really tiresome because it doesn't always work perfectly. You basically have to use your wrist. You hold down the trigger and use your wrist to go around on the menus, but it gets too fast sometimes and you're scrolling through things faster than you can control because it's overly sensitive. That wouldn't be a huge problem if you were only navigating those menus to get into the game, but remember, we're talking about Skyrim here. You spend a lot of time in the menus switching between spells, weapons, armor, potions, scrolls, books, miscellaneous, etc. So that's something that really does become quite annoying after a while. If you do spend a few hours in this game, you can master the art of navigating the menus, but it's going to be really annoying for you for the first while that you play this. The other part of the PS Move controllers that I don't necessarily think is a problem, but something that you will have to deal with, is finding how you personally want to play this. I spent the first few hours I played this game on snap movement, and I realized after a while that that just really wasn't doing it for me, so I swapped over to free movement, and then everything was moving around too fast. So then I had to go into the menus and slow everything down, where when I spin around, it's not so quick, because that can become really disorienting. And when I was streaming this for some viewers and I was using snap movement, they were getting disoriented watching it in 2D. So as I explained to them, imagine it being in 3D. If snap movement isn't your thing, then certainly you will get disoriented, so keep that in mind that if you're going to play it with the PS Move controllers and you're going to do this as a real full VR experience and you're going to stand up while you're doing so, you really need to go into the menus and fine-tune all of the movement and the way that you look around, because that's going to be a huge part of how much you enjoy this game and how long you can play it before you become uncomfortable.
So what I'm hearing is that, yet again, Bethesda has not perfected VR.
I don't think they have, especially with the default settings that it comes on, because you also use teleport when you first start up the game. I did not like that at all. I mean, maybe if you're going to play as a mage, you could get away with playing as a teleporter, but no way I would recommend playing this on teleport if you're really going to try to be active with combat, because it just really doesn't work out. Combat is another concern for me if you are going to play someone that uses a sword, one-handed, two-handed weapons, shields, etc., because everything doesn't feel fluid enough. When you use the shield, you really have to get the tracking perfect, and you really need to stand in a nice spot to get everything to work the way that you want it to. It just feels like it isn't quite fleshed out enough, and because of that, I decided to play as a mage. I thought that, having spells in my hands worked smoother than anything else did, and I also just liked the feeling of feeling like the Emperor from Star Wars and being able to shoot lightning out of my hands. So I prefer to play as a mage, but that leads me to another little complaint. The spells in this game makes the audio just ear-splittingly not only loud, but just staticky, and it feels like it just wasn't properly ported, where it's just like, and it's so loud, and it really hurts your ears. So in terms of combat, not only the mechanics, but sometimes the audio as well, seems like it may have been a little rushed, in my opinion.
So I gotta ask then, because I've been listening to you talk about this for the past 7 minutes or so, and it sure sounds like you started off with, this is the way that people should port games to VR, and you're ending it with, this is a bad port to VR.
The reason I say that this is a good way to port games to VR is because this is actually a full game. And think about how many hours of content that is. At the end of the day, this game does work. It has a few quirks, it has a few problems, but for me, I'm okay with playing a game that I've already played before in VR because it's a full experience. This isn't some sort of way of showing off a new technology. It isn't basically an advertisement for the future of VR. It isn't something that I'm going to pay $20 for and only spend an hour in. I do have a problem with paying $60 for it simply because I paid $60 for it multiple times before. But if I hadn't, I think it would be worth $60 because I don't know any other game on any platform, maybe with Fallout 4 coming out, that's another example of this, that is actually a game. Like really hours and hours and hours of content. The questing works, there are characters, and the characters look okay, everything is rendered properly. That is why I say this is a good example of what can be done with porting games to VR, because it allows for an entire game to actually give you hours and hours of gameplay. The port does come with problems, yes. So to call it a bad port in that way is true. I see where you're calling me out for sounding hypocritical here. What I'm saying is the concept of this is fine with me. There are lots of games that I played before, maybe even 10 years ago, that if they wanted to put in VR, I would love to buy it and play it. That would be great for me. But of course, there is a proper way to port a game when it comes down to making sure that all of the gameplay mechanics work, making sure that I can fight with my sword and it doesn't feel wonky, making sure that all of the audio sounds okay. All of those are things that they can work on and do better in the future. I just like the general idea of this and the concept of it.
Right, but if we've got a AAA developer, and Bethesda is a AAA developer, they make hundreds of millions of dollars off of their games. If we have a AAA developer who can't seem to do even the basic bottom-level stuff of making sure that it works well as a VR game, then that doesn't sound like something that you should pay $60 for. This game has weird problems because they didn't spend time making it a good VR game. And I can give you a couple of examples. When you're lockpicking, how hard is it to hit the sweet spot?
With the PS Move controllers, it is more difficult than if you're using the DualShock, but it isn't, I don't want to say that it's impossible, because by no means is it impossible, but it is more difficult. I'll admit that.
When you're trying to walk on a small ledge, how difficult is that to do?
That depends on the movement again to me. If you're using teleport and you don't have the movement working the way you want to, it can be a real problem, and it's something that I dealt with a lot. But after fine-tuning it and playing with probably 4 or 5 different setups, I found one that worked for me. And at this point, I'll say that I can navigate the world of Skyrim probably 90% as good as I can with a controller in my hands with the PS moves.
But the point is that even then, this game is not refined for VR. It's not like it's a game that has been built from the ground up for VR. It's not taking into account the problems that a VR player has. And that makes it feel to me like it's a blatant cash grab from a company that is kind of used to doing this. This is somebody who has put Skyrim onto every platform out there. I'm pretty sure it's on mobile phones now. I bet you could get it on the Zune. There is so many different ports of Skyrim. They're clearly trying to beat Doom as the most ported game of all time. And that feels like it's hard for me to say you should go play this game in VR if you've already played it and maybe didn't love it. There's nothing new here. It's not fresh, and it has problems. And it has problems that a AAA development shouldn't have. They should have, with the lockpicks, found that it was too difficult to find the sweet spot and given you some sort of assist. But they didn't do that. They should have found that with various movements, it is difficult to traverse the world. And they should have given you some sort of assist, but they didn't do that. Instead, what they did is they ported it over, and they would call it probably faithfully, they ported it over as is in order to make another $60 sale. And it worked!
The only reason that I will say that's a legitimate complaint for you to have is because we are talking about a AAA developer, and inherently that is related to what you're saying. For me, it's almost as if I have a hard time. If I were to hypothetically imagine that I had never played this before, right? That this wasn't a game that I knew everything about, and I wasn't a fan of Bethesda, and I didn't follow them and how they conduct business and things of that nature, I would have to say this is the most fun I've ever had in a PSVR headset. And that's why it's hard for me to not recommend the game, even though I agree with every single thing that you're saying, because everything that you're saying is true. It is unfair to charge $60 for this game, and for a AAA developer like Bethesda, do I think they could do better? Yeah, they could have ironed out a lot of the kinks that are in this game. Everything from the lockpicks to the things that I mentioned with combat and how magic sounds, etc., etc. Lots of little tiny things in this game that really should have been properly fixed if you're going to charge people $60 again. So I agree with you on that front, and I can totally see where you're coming from, but I still want people to know that playing Skyrim in a VR headset, it's a freaking blast, man.
That's fair enough, and I think that we should always remember that the fun factor of a game is really kind of the defining thing. If you have a good time in the game, it doesn't matter if it's broken. Some of my favorite games of all time have been broken pieces of crap, quite frankly, but I love them, and I have a lot of fun playing them, and I will still spend a good 15 or 20 hours playing a really broken simulator because I enjoy the key parts of it. It gives me fun. So if it is fun, then that's probably the major defining feature. I just still think that this game should have been better, and I'm disappointed that it wasn't better. There shouldn't be really obvious, and they really are obvious, by the way, really obvious audio problems when you're shooting a fireball. I mean, it sounds like somebody just went in the mic. It sounds terrible. It's so bad, and it's so loud, and it sounds so distorted, and it's just not AAA quality. It's not even good indie quality at that point, it's just plain bad. But the game is fun, and so if you're looking for a fun game and you like Skyrim, then there you go, you have Skyrim in VR. Just be aware it's broken and it's a cash grab.
Right, if you are aware of those two things and you can come to grips with it, then I think you're still going to have a lot of fun. And for those of you out there, and there are a lot of people, that are simply just really huge Skyrim fans, then you're going to have a lot of fun. I mean, there isn't really a lot more I could say about that other than, like you said, it's just I have to consider the fun factor when I look at this, and there is a lot to be had in that department. I just really do have reservations about the price tag still in my head, not only because I paid for it before, but the things we mentioned are only a few of the things in the game. Like, in general, I can't describe enough how trying to fight someone with a sword and a shield can become annoying in this game, because the character models can actually be inside of you, if that makes sense. Like, they will be so close to you that they're literally on top of you, and at that point you can't even swing the sword at them.
Oh, and you can't hit them? You mean sort of like exactly the same problem that was in Doom VFR? Man. Oh, okay. So, I get it. It's fun. It has broken problems, and Bethesda is probably not the best company to be making VR games, but you had fun with it.
That's a fair assessment. That sums it up perfectly. If you have a PSVR headset and you don't have a lot of games because the library's small, and you want something that's kind of like an old standby, you know, that you can pull out and I have nothing else to play, I guess I'll play Skyrim again, then I guess you can pick it up. Unfortunately, you're going to pay full price for it, though.
And I can hear the sadness in your voice. I can hear how much you really did enjoy having fun with this game. And you know what? I think that, again, comes down to if it is fun, then you should play it. And you shouldn't even listen to us at all, because this is what critics do. We talk about we talk about saying, oh, here are all the problems. And then you, the player, would look at it and go, but it's fun. So I get it. It's fun. You have fun with it. It's broken, and I don't respect Bethesda as a developer of VR titles at this point. Doom VFR was trash, it wasn't Doom, and it had the same kind of problems, and I'm sure Fallout 4 VR has the same sort of problems as well. It's the same kind of thing where it feels like a cash grab, and I have a hard time recommending that, but it's fun. It's really difficult for me, and it's kind of putting me on the scales here of what's more important, being authentic and being true to your values of saying, no, it's broken and it's a cash grab, or the sheer fun factor, because Brax says it's a hell of a lot of fun.
It is. I really think that this isn't a game that necessarily we should even concentrate so much on recommending or not recommending, because if you're watching this video, you obviously play video games. And if you've never played Skyrim, I don't know where the hell you've been the past 5 or 6 years. So I'm assuming you have played Skyrim before and you know about it, you know what it is. Imagine Skyrim in VR, but it has a lot of bugs. Do you want to pay $60 for that? That's really what it comes down to.
So there you go, guys. That's Skyrim VR. If you like it, like it. If you don't like it, don't like it. But if you did like it, go ahead and watch another video up there in the corner. And as always,
we'll see you guys on the next one.